republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wonderful to see everybody here. Almost all the chairs are filled, and I know it's because we have some very happy to have it later on. Just a minute. Thank you. First, I just want to start off with just really celebrating our students at the high school for their Little Mermaid performances. They were absolutely wonderful. I know we all were able to attend the Little Mermaid, and we all were excited about it. The Challenger basketball games, they were fantastic at the high school, and it was really wonderful to see so many students in attendance. So that was great. We just had our Winter Sports Awards, and Mr. Epstein always does such a wonderful job every year with the sports awards. He makes every student, every coach, every family feel so special. So we're really appreciative of all of his efforts. We are a very special district, and it's just so nice to be able to say all of these wonderful things about all of you and our students. And now, without further ado, Mr. Pinto would like to extend his regrets in not being able to be here tonight. He's away at a conference, and poor Dr. Gallagher is homesick. So you know that she would really, really want to be here. So you know that it's hard for her not to be here. But you know she's here in spirit, and Mr. DeVito will speak in her stead. Mr. DeVito?
Thank you, Mrs. Conlon. I'd like to take item 1X in advance of the other items on the agenda this evening, which is Dr. Gallagher's recommendation for appointment of tenure. And I have a statement here that I'd like to read on her behalf. I am sorry I am ill and cannot be there this evening to recommend Elise Hernandez and Serena Whitfield for tenure. I ask Mr. DeVito to read these remarks on my behalf. Both of these women became administrators in Long Beach during the 2019-20 school year. I don't think any of us need to be reminded of what happened 4 years ago this month, or of the many challenges of that school year and the school years which followed. These two generous women rose to every challenge, carrying Lido Elementary School and the high school special education department respectively through these tumultuous 4 years. They each did so with a smile, a generosity of spirit, and a dedication to children that is inspiring for all of us who work with them. They also happen to be two of the kindest people I have ever met. Both Dr. Hernandez and Ms. Whitfield are excellent leaders and assets to the Long Beach community, and I am proud to enthusiastically recommend them to the Board of Education for tenure.
First, we make a motion, and then we have discussion. May I make a motion? Motion. Second?
Okay, so your motion is to
To accept these wonderful educators.
well, yes, to move, okay. What letter were you,
X, 1X.
All right, so I with respect to 1X, only I make a motion.
And we have a second. Any discussion?
I would like to make a few comments.
Please.
This is a really special one for me because I have actually had personal interactions with both of these beautiful ladies. So I just wanted to say, for myself, it's a really proud moment. And tenure is a huge honor. I don't need to tell you that. And I can't think of two women that are more deserving. I believe that when I was a parent advocate, and without going into too much detail, it was a very special situation with a very special student, and she took the time to speak to me about this student, and I could just see her passion and love, and she took this kid under her wing, and I'm proud to say this child is doing amazing in the school, and I think really a lot of it is attributed to her. As far as Ms. Whitfield is concerned, it's a personal relationship because she helps my daughter. She's worked with me as a school board member, but also as a parent, and she's never once blurred those lines. And sometimes that's hard, right? Because as a school board member and a parent, but she's professional, she's wonderful, and she does for my daughter what she does for every single student. And we have some high need students. So I just want to applaud both of you. When I saw both your names and the fact that it was the two of you, I couldn't let the night go by without personally congratulating you and thanking you for dedicating the time with our students and with us and with our community and with our
I just want to begin my comments by sort of apologizing. We called off the meeting last week because we thought it would be very insensitive to bring people in on a night the forecast was such an inclement one. And we knew many people were coming from out of town, so we just thought it would be safer for everybody if we just canceled last week and rescheduled. So we apologize, or I apologize, for keeping you two ladies waiting. But I just want to just say a bit about tenure. I think tenure is probably one of the most serious charges that the Board of Education is called upon to vote for. You know, to give somebody a lifetime appointment is a very serious charge. And we take that very seriously. I think there's overwhelming support for the two candidates tonight. And we just hope that in the duration of your careers here in Long Beach, and we hope they go for a long time, you'll certainly outlast me in terms of that time. But we hope that, 10, 15, 20 years from now, you bring the same energy, that you bring the same kind of joy for learning that you've brought during your probationary period. We thank you for your service. Mrs. Whitfield, we're particularly grateful that a student, graduate of Long Beach, has come back and is serving. And that serves us, and that makes us very, very proud of our profile of a graduate, because you were a great student way back when. Your mother was a great school nurse way back when. Your sisters were great students way back when. And you're a wonderful employee. So we thank you. And Dr. Hernandez, we thank you too. We'll claim you as a student. Nobody will know the difference. But we're grateful for your service, and we hope that you have many more years to come serving our children and serving our community here at Long Beach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, since we've already put it off for a week, I'm not gonna make really long comments, but I also am so proud of both of you. You guys do such a great job for our kids, and I couldn't be happier to have both of you get tenure tonight. Thanks.
And I would just like to celebrate. I would also just like to add that, you don't always remember what people teach you, but they always remember how you treat them. And both of you have shown that you really care about the relationships you have with all the staff and the students and your parents and the families. So we are very lucky to have you two ladies on board. Congratulations on your tenure tonight. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Ryan?
Yes, I vote yes.
Ms. Case?
Absolutely.
Ms. Verona?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And I vote yes. Congratulations. In honor of these two wonderful ladies, we're going to stop the meeting for a little while. Please, coffee and cake, everybody.
How are you? Good. I don't want to make them wild, I'm sorry.
He's already wild anyway. Chasing the ball. That's the plan.
He'll be 3 in June. I might, not yet, he's not ready yet. He's speaking Spanish. Hi, Kareem. I haven't seen you. How's everything? Not as much energy, but let me tell you, I'm like, she's very crazy. And she's very demanding. Hello, Grayson. Let me take a picture of you guys. What? Oh, you can hopefully it's him. Grayson, how about you hold the flowers? Okay, you get a big smile. Oh, look at him. Oh my God, I can't. Grayson. Cheese. Grayson. Smile.
I want to go play basketball.
You think?
Thank you.
Do you want to like go over here where there's nobody behind us?
I hope you're all done.
We're gonna hug
Congratulations. Thanks, Miss Tierra.
I have to hug her.
Always a little, you have to watch out. Hi, what's going Yeah, they look really good.
She's not even opening her eyes. Do it again.
I'm not your eyes.
Come here. Can I hold you? I thought he liked me.
You don't want you to hold her
I tried. I was like, wait, what? Oh my god, it looks so bad. No, you don't. It's not. I put that in.
Oh, that's good. Oh my god, I can't.
All right, I love you guys, but I'm going home to see Baby Shay. How do you get home yet?
I'm not going to forget them. Bye. Thanks so much. Say bye-bye.
I'm going to see Baby Shay. She's turning 2 this weekend. Okay. Bye, guys. I'll see you later.
All right, it's good seeing you. Bye. I have no
So everyone, you are more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you would like to, but you don't have to. We know that many of you just want to go celebrate the 2 wonderful educators who just received their tenure. But we do have to get started. We have a wonderful presentation by Mr. DeVito. So we thank you very much. Before Mr. DeVito gets started on his presentation, I would just like to let everyone know that Dr. Ostroff and Dr. Natali would also like to have been here, but because this meeting was rescheduled, they were not. They had already scheduled interviews that they're doing right now, so that's why they are not here. All right, so Mr. DeVito is ready. We have a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Mr. DeVito.
Thank you. Well, hopefully it's informative. I just hope. Good evening, everybody. So we're going to be talking about middle school, high school, special education, and I just want to give you a capital projects update for this evening. As you may have realized, this year is more high level than we've done in prior years, just because there aren't that many changes to the program between the current year and next year. And we're going to ask just some more of a high level presentation in exchange for getting the line by line to them earlier so that they had an opportunity to really review it in detail and ask questions and have that time to process it. So I'm just going to jump right in and start with the middle school program. So what you see here are the budget function codes. And you know our budget is organized into different functions. So A2020, 2070, so forth. A2110 is the largest, and that's instruction. That's where all of our teachers are, and that's where you'll find the line items for instruction in the classroom. While 2070 is much smaller, and that's what we call in-service, just as some examples here. What you're seeing here is an increase in the middle school program of about 2%, and this increase in the proposed budget is due to contractual salary increases for staff, along with an additional general education permanent substitute slot. So over the years, we've been, hiring permanent subs in order to avoid the costs of coverages or the unpredictability of trying to call it per diem and having these permanent subs who report in. So in the current year, we actually didn't have the 6 slots in the budget, even though we do have 6 permanent subs. So we needed to add that slot to the budget. For next year, we are going to have 1 fewer 6th grade teacher based on the smaller incoming 6th grade. This teacher will actually be shifted, so it's not a net savings to the district, but it is a savings to the middle school because this line is now going over for the additional kindergarten that we're going to have at West School. And I think I mentioned that when I spoke about the elementary program. I also increased the line items for different supplies because of inflation, costs are going up. Most notably for the family and consumer science classes is the largest increase that you see in all of those supply increases, and that's why I highlighted that as well. So not a big increase here, mostly for salary increases, column, step, but it does include that 1 fewer 6th grade teacher and some increases for supplies due to inflation. Over at the high school, you see I've taken the same subset of budget function codes, but included in here, as in the middle school, is attendance. That's also a function there. Co-curricular as well. The proposed program includes some shifts from the different departments. When I prepared this presentation, I said no net change overall. And this is something that I explained to the board that even after I do a first draft line by line, my team and I would go over the lines again, and I call the schools again, and we talk and we say, okay, anything new, what can we do? And we're always working to see if there's a way that we can just be more efficient. So even though I don't show it here, after some conversations that I've had with the high school team Friday, Monday, we feel that we can reduce. So we feel that we can reduce a certain percentage of an EL teacher because of the co-teaching model in a couple of classes. We don't actually need to have the 2 teachers teach this EL English. We can have 1. So that saves a little bit of an FTE there. So I will update that for my next draft line by line. So that will be a change, and also some other changes that the high school have done in terms of their programming. We are going to see, so it'll be a 0.4 for an EL teacher that'll get reduced, and the 0.3 for the phys ed, and that's where we are at this point. So some updates to that line item. You see here a little bit more of an increase, and that's because in the current year budget, we had 4 general education permanent sub-teachers, but we needed to add 2 additional that are working this year, but they weren't in the original budget for this year, so we needed to add those slots because that decision was made after the budget was prepared. So you see here about a 3% increase for the high school program. Special education, this function is 2250, right? And again, these functions, these large budget functions include salaries, they include equipment, they include what we call vendor services, where a vendor comes in to perform a certain service. They also include, and you'll see here, out-of-district placements in special education, and they include supplies. So you see here a reduction, right? We're looking at a net reduction, which is wonderful because we know that, special education costs are sometimes hard to manage because sometimes it's just what the kids need and you can't really, do too much about it because you want to give the kids what they need. But we do see that we've changed the model for these learning labs. So we reduced the need for learning labs for students in the integrated co-teaching classes that we expect to yield a reduction of 2 teachers at the high school, 3 teachers at the middle school. And that's big. That was something that we've been working hard on to see what can we do differently. How can we operate differently where we can be more efficient and still support kids? And that's why it's important for me to say that we all believe that this is really what's best for kids. The secondary benefit is that it saves money, but the primary benefit is that it helps kids to learn to become more independent. So we changed this course or this program, so to speak, in terms of these learning labs and how we're staffing them. We also are going to have 10 fewer part-time teaching assistants based on a revised model. So not only did we revise these learning labs, because again, we feel it's better for kids, but we are going to have something called a building TA that will be able to reduce the actual TAs, but still have them available for kids as they need. Again, primary objective is to do what's right for kids, to have them gradually learn to be independent and not to be too dependent, especially as they move through our system. So a student may need some greater supports when they're at the elementary level, but hopefully they're learning to become more independent, and those supports will be called gradual release, where little by little it's tapered back. Another thing that's included in this budget, even though we have this net reduction, is we are going to shift from this 0.4 of mindfulness that we have in the current year to a 1.0 in mindfulness program. And what does that mean? It means that we have a teacher who's going to be spending a quarter of her time in each of the 4 elementary schools. And because of that, because we had her as a 0.4, because now it's going to be the 1.0, we need to backfill that spot in Lido Elementary. Still, net decrease in special education. A couple of other highlights in the special education function is 2250. Is we're going to have 1 fewer integrated co-teaching class at East Elementary School, but 1 more special class at Lido. So it's a wash in terms of the cost, but this explains how it's going to be moving from 1 fewer at East to 1 more at Lido. There will be 2 fewer students attending out-of-district schools, and included in that are the private schools and the public schools. So we send our students to other public schools that have a program that's designed for the student that we do not have. For example, we have some students that go to Rockville Center, that go to Herrick's, and there are going to be 2 fewer compared to the current year, so some savings there. This number has been updated. At this point, there will be 1 fewer student attending most of these out-of-district schools. So that's based on some new information. And there is an increase in the out-of-district related services line due to the high cost of the specific services that will be needed in that particular service. I'd like to update where we are in capital projects. The board knows about this because I've been updating them on a periodic basis, that we did have some heating pipes, hot water heating pipes leak in the crawl space under the classrooms in the 100 wing in the middle school. Based on what has happened, we repaired those pipes. They're no longer leaking, but we do need to replace them. And if we're going to replace them, all those pipes that are in the crawl space at the middle school, we have to move them up to the ceiling. And we said, this is now a priority. And this is what happens. Sometimes you shift priorities. We shifted some other things that we thought were going to be part of this 5.2 million subset of projects from our large 85 million annual projects that we'd like to do. But we'll still be able to relocate the heating pipes. Excuse me, I'll get that in a minute. So what these relocation of the heating pipes is going to do is that we're going to move them from the crawl space to the ceiling, and we're also going to install some unit ventilators. What is a unit ventilator? It provides fresh air, heat, and cooling to the spaces, right? So what we'll see here is we'll do a limited amount of space, the 100 wing, move those pipes up to the ceiling, install the unit ventilators. Now here's the tricky part, is we don't know exactly what the cost is going to be when we go out to bid in a couple of years. So we're gonna craft a language here to say, yes, we don't have enough money to relocate these pipes, but we'll see how many unit ventilators we can install based on the money we have available. What we also want to do, besides the installation of the unit ventilators, is that we also want to replace 4 HVAC units at the high school. Our mechanics work very hard at the high school trying to tinker with some of these units that really need to be replaced. So little by little, we've been doing it. So we want to do 4 of those units at the high school. We also want to replace a kitchen sewer line, as well as the sidewalk curb on the eastern side of Manila Elementary, because it's a safety issue. We want to make sure that it's smooth and safe for our staff and our students. So some updates on what's going to be in that $5.2 million subset of projects coming out of money we have on hand from our capital reserve fund that will be a ballot proposition for the May 2023 vote. Any comments and questions from the board?
Dr. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Vito, for the presentation. Just a couple of questions. First, I'm a little bit surprised about the mindfulness addition to the budget. I was under the impression last year and the years before we had conversations where the teacher who was consulting or who was doing the program by pushing in was basically working with the elementary teachers, I think, 6 or 8 times a year in terms of that over the past 5 years. And I thought that was going to be sufficient for the teachers themselves to become mindful experts or mindful teachers in terms of that. And I say that because the costs are snowballing, inflation's hitting us all, and I just saw that as a place where we could save a significant amount of money. I do want to let the community know that we looked at class sizes for both the middle school and high school, because it was important for us to see just how subscribed certain classes were. And I was a bit taken aback in some cases that some classes where maximums were established at 28. And I knew that 28 wasn't realistic, but that's what it was. And some of them were not filled by 50% of that number, 12 and 13. So I questioned some of the enrollments in some of the classes because I thought, once again, fiscally speaking, and having a fiduciary responsibility as a trustee, it was incumbent on us to look at where money was being spent and where we could best save it. So I like the consolidations, and this was primarily in general ed where we looked at these kinds of issues, and I'll take primary responsibility. I won't throw my other trustees in, but to me it was very serious to look at enrollments, both in the middle school and high school, and to try to make amends where I thought some of the classes were undersubscribed. So that's a concern of mine, so I'm hoping as we move forward that we're all a little bit more mindful of class sizes and economic realities, fiscal realities, and do what's best for the district in that regard. I see no mention of Avid on the presentation, and I'd like some information in terms of the cost of Avid, in terms of that program in high school. I've gone through item by item in terms of the IB, and I'd also like to see the overall cost of the IB program as well, in terms of that. And I've raised some questions also about BOCES, the number of kids we send out to BOCES. We spend an exorbitant amount per student in town, between $28,000 and $30,000 per child, which is a lot of money. And I just want, once again, to look at where we're spending money across the board, and are we being fiscally responsible? When I say that, the board, in terms of improving these programs. So I'd like to look at both these numbers in terms of that. Once again, I've gone through the line by line. I hope to make an appointment with you in the very near future to go through some specific questions and votes. But those are primarily the issues that hit me. And I'd just like to ask in the future, as we're approaching, and we probably have about a month before we have to present the budget in terms of this is what we're going to vote on, this is it. Science Hill delivered, this is what we're going to present to the community. So I just would like, before that, future presentations, if we could just put the calendar in the back in terms of what the future, next presentation is going to be, in terms of what topic, when the board has to make the has to vote on the budget, and when the budget does go to the community, so that we're all sort of aware of what the time crunch is in terms of coming to decisions and recommendations in terms of the budget there. So once again, thank you for the presentation, comprehensive as always, and those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. May I just respond to one thing that I think is important to be said in terms of the mindfulness? I think at one point in time, there was the idea that we were gradually going to pull back on what had started as a 1.0. But I think the position of the administration, I know Dr. Gallagher would say this if she were here, is that we think it's so important and it does so much good for our students that we decided to just shift gears and go back to a 1.0. So you're correct that at some point there was this kind of tapering off and then we'll maybe a leveling off of where it was this year, but we did switch gears based on the value that we think it's giving towards.
If you don't mind, I'd like to just respond to some of Doc's comments. So as much as I respect Doc's opinion, and I don't want to say that he's wrong, I would say I just approach this a little bit differently, maybe from a different lens. So in my mind, although yes, there have been discussions about being fiscally responsible, that is what we're charged with as a Board of Ed, right? I also think it's really paramount importance to always keep our students in mind and kind of where we are right now. And the way I see it for the mindfulness program is that from how I understood it, and correct me if I'm wrong, we did have a full-time program. We decided to go to this 0.6, I believe it was 0.4, I'm sorry, 0.4. And the idea at that time, I believe it was last year, Dr. Gallagher did kind of promise the public and the parents that it would be reviewed. So if this didn't work, that she would come back and give us feedback. And I think that what the administration has shared with us, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the feedback has been that maybe we need it back, and maybe that it would benefit our students. And so I think it's important for us to balance what we're hearing from the public and also balance our budget. And this is what we do this time of year. So I would say utmost of importance is that if there are people here or in the community that support the mindfulness program and maybe want to speak on behalf of it, for or against, like now's your chance. That's why we have public comment. My position on it is that I think it's useful. I think it's beneficial. I think our students right now, from what I see personally with my own children and what I hear in the community, we're struggling still, right? We're still coming out of a lot. And so I think the more we can be mindful, the more we can practice these things, maybe the better we can be. So my position differs a little bit on that. As far as reviewing class sizes, I just want to make it abundantly clear that it is not my position as a Board of Ed member to look at class size and then to think about how we're going to cut things, right? So everybody hears class size and then you automatically in your mind, because as a community member, I would think it too, they're going to start cutting programs, they're going to start cutting teachers' positions. That's not how that looks. It's really just about balance. And so I don't want anybody to panic, but this is again the time of year where we, as a board, that's what we're charged to do. That's what you elect us to do. And I hope they can have our, that you understand that we are here for all you and your students and the community, but we also have a responsibility to the taxpayers as well. So we're going to balance all that. So I just want to make sure you understand what that looks like when we talk about class sizes or BOCEs. All these things are just pieces of the puzzle, but it hopefully will all start to make sense, and it will be, I can say from my perspective that I like to see other things go well before we take anything away from our students. That is paramount for me, is keeping programs, people, payers happy, if that makes sense. That's it.
Ms. Rona?
Thank you, Mr. DeVito, for another wonderful presentation. I also wanted to weigh in on the mindfulness and class size comments that have already been made. I can't turn on any kind of electronic device or open up any kind of print publication without seeing the epidemic of mental health, the crisis, I guess, of mental health issues amongst our youth today. So I gotta think that mindfulness has gotta help. I know it helps me, and I think it's gotta help our kids. And if, you know, it would be a lovely world if we could just phase out the mindfulness teacher and have the classroom teacher take over all of this. But I think in this post-pandemic world right now, it's just not possible, you know. So I certainly am in support of the administration proposal to add the mindfulness teacher back into the budget. With respect to class size, look, we hire like really great people in this district to do that scheduling. And, you know, I ran for the board because I was concerned about student engagement. And that is really like, that's always been my number one thing, is that we have to, and the earlier we get them engaged, the better off they're gonna be and we're gonna be as a district. So, so I, you know, and the people that we hire know that. I mean, there are people who have those jobs and they know that. So I am a trustee who's willing to go with smaller class sizes. If, you know, I know for some kids, they go to school because of athletics. Some kids go to school because of art. My kid went to school because of model Congress. You know, but different things engage different kids. And if our school administration, high school and middle school administration feels that we need to run classes, some smaller classes for our students, then I am totally in support of that. And I'm not qualified to look at those class sizes and say, this should be cut or this shouldn't be cut. That's their job, and that's my job, is to either figure out how to pay for it or say we can't afford it. And I understand your perspective, Dr. Wright, because I also feel that I am a responsible steward of district money. But not when it comes to mindfulness and smaller class sizes for students who may otherwise struggle to be engaged in school. I'll tell you next week what I would be willing to do. I do have just one quick question on the presentation. If now that only one fewer student and the 5 fewer students are going to BOCES, does that now even it out, so we're out at 0?
I don't think so. I have to review the numbers again because there were some other adjustments. But I'm going to send that home to the board. But I think there's still a reduction.
Okay. All right.
And what I think happened, I just may explain this, I think when we first had this number, you know, because it's a presentation that's ongoing, we had a different number here. There was a greater reduction. I think then I updated the number. I didn't update the language.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I didn't want to give a new presentation this evening, so I just figured I'd do a caveat and say, this amount is going to change, but I'll send home what these 2 functions are, current year and proposed year, on Friday.
Okay. And I must have missed something along the line, because I thought that there was going to be some kind of a decrease in FTEs at the high school.
So if I had done this presentation last Tuesday,
Yes.
it would have been different.
Which is probably the reason that I was familiar with it, my notes are.
Right. So what's interesting about the high school is it's something that's been kind of, sorry about that, everybody. It's been back and forth, right? So when I did the presentation, the draft that I was supposed to do on the 14th, right, the board gets the presentation the Friday before. At that point, I showed the minus 0.3 in phys ed. I think that's what it was. It netted out plus 3 in business, and then there was that adjustment in second grade swimming. Met with the high school team, spoke to my central administrative colleagues, there was some back and forth about programs and what would happen. And this is what's hard about the budget is that this is when our teams at the middle school and the high school are actually digging in to this stuff at the same time that I'm trying to get a bottom line so that I can talk to the board and do a line by line. So sometimes it's a little bit of, okay, I need to make an adjustment or what is it? And they talk about staffing and they go, oh wait, we can do it this way. And maybe we'll run this class over at the middle school and then we don't need it at the high school. So there's this back and forth that's happened over the past 2 weeks. So last Friday, I changed this to say that pretty much it's going to be a wash. But then there was some additional conversations even on Friday after I completed the draft to put in the update. And on Monday, it was like, you know what? I think we actually can save a 0.7, right, net in terms of everything goes. Now, where it's from, it doesn't really make a difference because there's increases in some departments and decreases in others. But the real change was this concept, that's what I shared with you, of that we don't need to do this co-teaching for these 2 classes because our E&L teacher is actually English certified, and we don't need to have 2 teachers in the room. We can just have the one E&L teacher do the English because she has both certifications. So that was something that was new, that was a real change. But my sense, where we're going to end up, is a minus 0.7 overall between the current year and next year.
And my only other question is, I understand that the hot water heating pipes under the 100 swings, that's what has to be done now. I think it's an emergency. Is it an emergency?
Well, it's not an emergency in the sense that
Right.
it's not leaking anymore. But what happened is when they went down in the crawl space and they removed those pipes and they saw the condition of these original pipes, they were like, wow. We then
So we all agree that, and we've known for a few years that those pipes were getting to the point where they were gonna.
What's interesting, Mrs. Roman? Not really, because we've been always talking about the steam pipes. These are the hot water pipes. Yeah, right. No, we were always talking about the original steam pipes.
So this wasn't on our list of capital projects, the hot water pipes?
It was part of, if we're gonna air condition the middle school and we're gonna put univents in so we have the fresh air, we have to move them from the crawl space up because we have to put univents in. So it was part of, let's say, the other phase, let's call it phase 2 or phase 3, which was univents, so mechanical fresh air, where they don't have it in the middle school, and the ability to put a chiller or a compressor so we can have air conditioning.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Was it part of the $87,000?
Yes.
The hot water
Yes.
pipe is part of the, okay.
Yes.
But if we had divided it into a maintenance/enhancement and air conditioning, two budgets, votes, which one would have gone into?
I think it would have been in the air, I think then it would have been in air conditioning, that's right.
Okay, so this wasn't really on our radar at all, okay.
No, and that's what was interesting, so I was talking about with, the facilities team, all along we were talking about the steam pipes. Those are the ones that were leaking and causing problems, and then they went down there, and when we had this problem, they're like, wow, these hot water pipes have deteriorated because of where we are, right? Because they're in a crawl space, they're original, and because they were underwater and sandy. So all 3 of those factors really eroded the metal of these pipes, and when they took them out, the ones that were actually broken, and they saw the same pipes, they were like, wow, we really need to elevate this priority.
Okay, all right, so then moving on to the high school, the 4 HVAC units at the high school. They did not, until we started talking about the proposed bond a year from now, I hadn't really heard about the replacement of those. So how did they all of a sudden get to be such a priority?
So they were always part of the building condition survey, always part of that, list of projects in the high school that needed to be replaced in terms of HVAC. With the ARP money, we even slated that a few of the HVAC units be replaced because we knew we needed to do a few at a time. It's costly, right? And so we're using some ARP money for that. And when we first started talking about using money, whether it's for the bond for this year or the capital reserve, some HVAC units were always in the mix. So it was always part of it, always part of it.
Okay, and how did the sidewalk and curb at the eastern side of Glendale Elementary
Saying that was part of the list.
So but they were just, those are, see, it seems to me those were parts of the list that were kind of just there. Like not, they weren't like top priority things that we
Well,
needed to do.
They were always a priority, and they were always part of,
Okay.
even if we weren't gonna do the relocation of the pipes, we were gonna do these items. They were part of that 5.2 from a few weeks ago. Then when we knew we wanted to do some of these group pipes, we sat down and said, okay, what from now, the 5.2 million list from a couple of weeks ago is really important. And we said, well, the curb, because we don't want any pipe trip, right? And the sewer line, because we don't want to have a problem where they're gonna get backed up with,
All right, great, thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeVito. Do you need some water?
You want some cake?
We got plenty of cake. First, thank you so much for your presentation and for always being so transparent. You explain everything beautifully. You always quick to answer our questions, and I'd like to thank you for that. For the middle school program, how much was for the increase in the food allotment? I know food has gone up quite a bit, but what is this ballpark figure? How much has it?
So I think what they asked for, and if you remember, please jump in and correct me, I think it was about $10,000, right? That you said, based on cost and the experience over the past several years, that they needed. But it wasn't just, I just highlighted the food because that was the highest, but other supplies as well. We're noticing when we have to get supplies for the different programs, prices have gone up.
I was also kind of thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we could do our own homegrown in the greenhouse for our family and consumer science classes?
I don't know how much we'd save on supplies, but I think we'd have fun doing it, right?
You know, I'm very happy to see about in the high school program, how you guys are very close in making sure that our programs are there and they're focused on what our children need. Actually, I've seen that in all your presentations. You know, middle school, the high school, and special ed. One thing that we've always said is that our children are our center, right? And the budget has to tell the story of how we take care of our students.
Yeah.
And I can see here that you guys are being very responsible in how you're ensuring that our students are receiving the programs that they need. So I'm very appreciative of that. I do want to discuss a little bit about the mindfulness program. Now, this is only at the elementary level, correct? Mindfulness?
That's correct.
So I know that we had the program going out for a few years. And what I'd like to know is we thought that when we had that program out, we would help all of our educators become comfortable with mindfulness so they could also be able to practice it. But we see now that we don't feel that our educators are comfortable enough to teach mindfulness.
I don't think that I would say that, not that they're not comfortable with it, but I think that as a district, in terms of the administrators and the staff, the teachers, we feel that we see the difference by having somebody come into the class who's been specifically trained in this practice and work with our students versus a teacher and teachers where that comfort level may vary by classroom to classroom. We may have some teachers, they may be doing this practice themselves and have done it for years, and for them, they're very comfortable with it. But others, it's somewhat new to them, maybe not as comfortable with it. So instead of our students having an uneven experience across our 4 elementary schools, we know that there's this person who can come in, and we did it right when we first started it, and it was hugely successful. And just to point something out, we're only talking about a 0.6 of one person's salary, right? So in the scope of things, to bring this hugely beneficial service to our elementary students, we think it's worth it. Right? Well, and I always talk about value, right? That's one of my things I always talk about is what's the value of the dollar that we're spending? And we have to make these decisions. So I know I speak on behalf of Dr. Gallagher when I say that the value of adding that 0.6 so that mindfulness teacher can devote full time to the elementary classrooms and students is well worth it. And this way we won't have a potentially uneven experience throughout our schools.
I would also like to know then, how much professional development are we going to offer in mindfulness so that our educators can also benefit from the program?
Well, I can tell you that we will certainly work with the curriculum office and with the teacher center to make sure that these courses are available to our staff and encourage them. And we'll talk about how we can encourage our staff to take advantage of these types of courses so that they can improve their own practice.
Right, because we talk about our students, but it's also our whole district staff. They can all benefit from it. And for them to be able to have the mindfulness training will help them consistently throughout their day. It's not just when you can have the mindfulness teacher come in, but throughout the day when students are having any type of difficulty. But I do want to echo what Ms. Pace said. It would be lovely to hear from our parents and our community what their thoughts are on the program as well. Because we are here for you and we do want to hear your voice. So your voice is important.
I would also add, I think Doc usually say this best, but this is just a proposal.
Yes.
So this is not, gospel, it's not written in stone, so it can change and it will change. This is just, I guess, the best way to put it, and Mr. Vito can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the wish list, this is everything if we had, right?
Well, I just wouldn't say wish list because we spend months
Well,
hammering these things out, but it's our proposal. Right, it's our proposal. It's our proposal. It's a priority.
And then we yay or nay.
I just wanted to make that.
But I do like what Dr. Ryan said as well about having a calendar up for our budget. That would be very helpful.
Yeah, and I apologize for that. I usually do it, but
Yeah.
I just blinked and we're in March.
I know, it happens, but, so thank you very
Yeah,
much.
I will
don't
have it
any
for
more.
next Tuesday, absolutely.
I just want to say that I think our next meeting on March 28th, which is today, is our last meeting before budget adoption.
So it's important that everybody from the community comes. And
There's one more meeting before budget adoption.
that's it.
So I think you can't make comments on budget adoption, but it's more helpful.
Yes. Yes, Dr. Ryan?
Just 2 points. First, in terms of, I don't think anybody would discredit mindfulness. I've just been told just how wonderful it is, but I've never seen any hard data related to it in terms of that. I mean, the kids like it, and that's fine, and the teachers feel that it's coming in and helping them, fine. But I've never seen any kind of evaluation of the program other than hearsay, I will say, in terms of that. So that enters into my formula. And I failed to admit also that when I asked for class sizes, I also asked the middle school and high school for lists of clubs, because I wanted to see which clubs would subscribe. And everybody wants to engage kids, but if we got 3 in a club, I'm not so sure it's practical in terms of that. And we're using our resources appropriately. So I think that too, and I didn't see any mention tonight of clubs. So that too is something.
We're gonna talk about that on Tuesday.
That too is an issue that is concern to me in terms of just, once again, and the whole issue in terms of budget for all of us, but I'll speak for myself, is once again, is that word of equity. You want to provide not a Rolls Royce for every kid, but basically what he or she needs within reason. Understanding that we're not a private school, that we're a public school that owes the community of $35,000 an honest shake in terms of how we choose to spend $140 million. It's almost comical for me to sit here and listen to the $60,000 that we're talking about mindfulness, and we've got a budget of $140 million. So I applaud us in terms of talking publicly about mindfulness, but I think we really need to talk publicly about a number of other issues in terms of that are expensive, that are needed. But once again, it's a question of being Solomon. What do we do now in weighing the issues and weighing the realities before us all? What choices do we make to present to the community? So that's an issue that for me. And I just want to applaud you, Mr. DeVito, on your excellent use of fewer and less. You're a master. Thank you.
I had a very good teacher.
Thank you.
So did I, and it didn't work.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vito. Student organization comment announcements. Questions and comments from the public on tonight's agenda only. Okay, the treasurer's report for January 2023. Oh, Ms. Banks, please step up to the podium, state your name and your address. Sorry, I didn't see you.
Dr. Pamela Banks, West Bay Drive. I just want to say that as a pediatrician, our children right now are very, very stressed. In pediatric world, we don't have enough people to give them the proper therapy. And I feel that if we can offer any type of mindfulness program and help in our schools, you can't put a price on that. And I think that if we could do more, that would be wonderful too. So I'm very big a proponent of keeping the mindfulness program, helping it. And I actually have a question. Do we have any similar programs in the middle school and high school for those students?
Mr. DeVito?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't believe we have a dedicated staff member as we had in the elementary school. And if I'm not mistaken, I think a couple of years ago, our mindfulness staff member did do some work in the middle school at least. I don't remember if it was actually worked on in the high school with that particular staff member and program. But I believe that over the years, we've been having this program for about 7 years, I think it is, that there's been work done at various levels. And I know that we have offered it at professional development conferences, different types of workshops on the mindfulness practice.
Because I just want to let you know that the amount of self-harm and suicide attempts have skyrocketed. And it starts, unfortunately, anxiety and depression starts in 3rd grade and escalates up into the high school. So,
I do know though, at the high school, our staff, they're very in tune to their students. And when they do see an issue, they do talk to students and they do formulate relationships. And I have heard of some teachers who just tell children just to take a break and take time to relax and to breathe. So I don't think it's a formal practice, but I think you're seeing teachers actually kind of incorporate some of the strategies within their classrooms when necessary.
In addition to that, Ms. Banks, we also have the advisory program that we have, now, which offers some similar type of support to students.
Additionally, they do have yoga in the high school class, so you can't take it as a class, and the spirit is here, but I think that there are some programs in the middle school, not really mindfulness, but beautiful me, I would say kind of overlap. So I would say, to answer your question as far as I know, although it's maybe not called mindfulness, I think it's practiced in more, on multi layers in our district in different ways.
all right, very good.
So I never got your address, Dr. Banks. I never got your address. Your name and your address, it is.
West Bay Drive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Amy Nicholas. I'm at 12,000 in the My name is Amy. I am the widow PTA president. I'm also a mom of an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I'm a board component educator. And I left the teaching world because my son is autistic. And there's a lot that goes into it. But as I was leaving the teaching world, all we were hearing about is that our students were having the highest level of anxiety that we've seen in years. And I agree with Ms. Verona, you can't turn on the news without hearing about the mental health crisis and the student shootings and the suicide attempts. And talking about my mom friends, that's all we hear. 2nd grade, 1st grade, 3rd grade, anxiety. Everybody has anxiety. My own child sees Sally Kaiser at the school for his own anxiety. And I've seen paperwork that the mindfulness teacher sends home to kids, and it teaches them on how to manage their feelings and manage stress. And I think that's extremely valuable with what's going on because our kids they are struggling. I mean, it's really sad when you're talking about 6-year-old, 7-year-old, which are really anxious, their stomach hurts. They don't want to go to school because of anxiety. And I feel like these are really important programs that, we talk about how social and emotional literacy is a huge part of this district. And I think we should put the money where our mouth is and definitely make sure that we are supporting these programs that are leading to the social and emotional part.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing.
I feel like I need to. My name is Amy here, Amy Elizabeth, 508 East Big Drive. And I just want to echo what Amy McNicholas said. I think this program is so important. I know that, especially even through like the COVID year, when we had the chance to either bring our kids back to school or to stay home, I actually chose to homeschool, like through the district. And one of the programs that was actually really amazing was with Mrs. Jolis and her mindful practice. And it really helped my daughter, who was second grade at that time. And now I have a first and fourth grader. And even my first grader just last week came home one day, and at bedtime she was like, Mom, when I get angry, I don't know what to do, and this and that. She wanted to write a book about it. And she came up with all these breathing techniques. Well, she came up with them, but she learned them somewhere, and I know she didn't learn them from me. So, you know, these things are having an impact on our students and our children. And, you know, I just want to echo what everyone's saying. I think it is really important to resource early on. So that, I mean, we can be better as a community, I think, for that. I'm learning it from my children who are in school.
Thank you. Treasurer's report for January 2023. I have a motion for the approval of minutes for executive session and regular meeting on February 14, 2023, and executive session and work session meeting on February 28, 2023. Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Pace?
Yes.
Ms. Verona?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Presentations of the superintendent?
Thank you, Mrs. Conway. I'd like to present personnel matters certificated, except for item 1X, which was taken already.
Any discussion? Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Pace? Yes. Ms. Verona?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
I'd like to now offer personnel matters non-certificated.
May I have a motion?
Second.
Discussion? Dr. Ryan?
I vote yes.
Ms. Pace? Yes. Ms. Verona?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
I'd now like the board to take items 3 through 12.
May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second? Any discussion? Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Pace? Yes. Ms. Verona?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
I'd like to now present the first reading of revised policy number 7510, student health services.
And I don't believe we have any.
Nope. I'd like to also present the first reading of revised policy number 7521, students with life-threatening health conditions. Then I'd like to ask the board to take items 15 through 17.
Motion. Thank you. Second? Second. Any discussion? Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Pace? Yes. Ms. Verona?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Any new or old business? Dr. Ryan?
Yeah, I just want to thank you two parents for coming out tonight. You've been talking before an empty room for the past 7 months.
Yes.
You know, and it's been very frustrating in terms of, with the exception of teacher representation and the administrators. It's so important for us to hear from parents in terms of what's going on and what your experiences are. And I applaud you two for coming out and advocating, and I ask you to speak to your colleagues in terms of that, because as we discuss budget, it's serious stuff, and we need to hear from parents in terms of what's working and what's not. So thank you for coming out and advocating, and thank the rest of you for staying, because it's so, I think, healthier for us to talk to a room filled with interested shareholders than just zipping through a meeting in 15 minutes and going home. So thanks for staying and thanks for participating. Thank you, Mr. Yu, for expediting these documents.
Thank you.
Ms. Pace, Ms. Verona? Mr. DeVito, I just have a question. Could you give us an update, please, on the manhole issue at the middle school?
Sure. We're grateful for Nassau County for sending over their staff with a big vacuum truck to vacuum out the clogged pipes and the debris that's been in there for years that was causing ponding on the very north side of the middle school field. They came I believe it was last week. They're coming, and either they were here today or they're coming tomorrow to do some more vacuuming. So what it is there's a it's a catch basin that's actually the property of Nassau County, and there are pipes that are connecting into this catch basin that's draining into the bay. So it's coming from the golf course. It's coming from our school. It's going underneath Harbor Drive and then depositing the water, the drain, the excess water into the bay. And it was clogging on very heavy rains, and it was creating a situation where we can pond it. So we're really grateful that the county has acknowledged the fact that this is their jurisdiction. It's their property. They brought in this vacuum truck, and we hope that after they finish clearing out whatever clogging is there, that they will also spend some and do some work to repair that catch basin. Thank you.
Mr. DeVito, do you know how long that process might take?
Well, like I said, they did a lot of work last week, and there was already an improvement. You didn't see any of the ponding that we saw in the past. They bringing the truck out. I just don't recall if it's today or tomorrow. That should, and then we'll get a report back for them. I know that they were working out from the other end, and they were going into there's another catch basin, another access point on Harbor Drive, and we'll hear from them as to what they think the next steps should be. And just so you know, Mrs. Conway, we've been keeping the neighbors, the residents updated as we move along.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Mr. DeVito. I just have one more question. What's happening with the fire alarm at the high school?
Right. So we are aware that we've had more fire alarm situations over the past year. And I know that Mr. Kramer has called in an alarm company to do some diagnostic surveys as to why this is happening. I am aware that what happened the other day, even though it showed that it was an alarm station that was pulled, it wasn't pulled. So we are going to, do some more research into it, and then we'll have to report to the board at a later time.
Yeah. Is this going to be something that we might have to add to capital projects?
Well, not to the 5.2.
Okay.
But we'll be able to do something for next year to determine, because we don't have enough time to really determine what the problem is and what the scope is. But we'll certainly be for next year.
Well, we're going to start looking into it now.
Oh, we've already started. Yeah, we've already started.
Okay, and you'll keep us updated with that as
Yes,
well,
I will.
right?
Yes, I
Thank you, Mr. DeVito. Okay. Questions and comments from the public? Anybody? On anything? Okay, Long Beach Classroom Teachers Association.
Hello, everybody. Just want to congratulate Ms. Whitfield and Ms. Fernandez on tenure. And I also want to thank you for considering the mindfulness, because we as teachers also have been lucky enough to be offered courses by Ms. Julis. And on conference day, I participated myself, and it was awesome. She's great. The kids love it, and thank you for considering it. We hope it stays there.
Thank you. Administrative Supervisory and PPS Group.
Hi, good evening. Keith Biesma, Professor of ASPG. I'd like to congratulate Joan Kowarski, Denise Callahan, Tricia Roach, and Lisa Dirk on their retirement. Wish them the best of luck in the future. We'd also like to congratulate Dr. Hernandez and Ms. Whitfield on their appointment for tenure. And I'd also like to echo Ms. Bloom's words on mindfulness and how we feel it's very important for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. LDSEA, Long Beach Schools Employee Association, Group C. PTA. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? Second. Have a great night, everybody. See you next week.